All right, guys, what's going on? It's Jack, and welcome back to another video. And today we're going to be concentrating on the topic of the Splitgate 2 progression system. Now, to my knowledge, there hasn't been anything officially revealed, or although there may be something that the devs have planned for when this game fully launches. However, we also know that unless there's been something said that I'm not aware of, we know that it's not going to be something that's going to be guaranteed on launch. In my mind, I'm thinking that they'll have something for us, but at the same time, we never know. Plus, there's also that surprise that they were kind of hinting at, but I have no idea what that is. Perhaps the Splitgate community that has been here long before me, ever since Splitgate 1, since before we even knew about it, or the majority of the people knew about it. So perhaps some members of the community might have ideas or maybe even some intel. But if there's nothing, we're going to use this video in order to give some ideas to the devs in terms of what we want, because transparency communication is a big one. And I was humbled when I found out that when I covered X Defiant, that apparently there were developers, the dev team were watching my stuff or listening to my stuff. So ever since then, I was like, wow, first of all, I was humbled, because I'm a small fry and everything, despite the fact that I've been doing this whole YouTube thing for 10 years. But the members of the dev team came to my stream and they said, yeah, a bunch of us on the team were watching your videos. I was like, wow. So it's like, okay, if that could happen with X Defiant, then that can happen with Splitgate 2. So let's get right into it. So when I think of a progression system, there's a whole bunch of things that come in mind. Just the same way when I think of Splitgate 2, there's a bunch of things that come to mind. Because when you look at the gameplay of Splitgate 2, it is a multi-layered first-person shooters. There's so many layers to it that literally takes bits and pieces, again, as I mentioned before in previous videos, of all these gameplay elements from all these other games and mixes them up very well, puts them together correctly, and presents them to us here, and of course adds portals into the mix. Now, I'm thinking that if there is going to be a progression system, which a lot of people are wanting at this point, right, and talking about, which is why we're making this video, I think it needs to be something that's multi-layered, and at the same time that kind of takes from some of these other games. Like, for instance, when you look at Titanfall, what those guys did was it was kind of challenge based in order for you to get to prestige, or should I say gen, because in Titanfall it was called generations basically, and you had to do different types of objectives and challenges to complete in order to qualify to be able to make it to a certain gen, right? Okay, so when you look at another game that stands out to me tremendously is another game called Halo Reach. And another reason why it stands out was because, number one, it took long to get to Inheritor, and not everybody did, for sure. It was like the equivalent of level 1000 for what Call of Duty did with Black Ops 3, if not longer than that, right? But along the way, there were rewards that were into the game. It had nothing to do with DLC or anything like that. It was all straight out of the box. You had to grind the game in order to unlock all the different kind of pieces of gear that you can get for your Spartan, right? Including some effects and stuff like that. Okay. You literally had to grind the game. So therefore, I'm thinking, well, obviously this game can do that as well, because I do know that there's an in-game currency system, if I'm not mistaken, that may or may not be tied to the battle pass, because I know there's split coins, but I know that there's another one, and I apologize, I can't think of what it's called right now. But anyway, so again, with an in-game currency system, again, this is where you can kind of take advantage and kind of add to a progression system that kind of goes along with it. And ultimately, along with XP, you've also got the currency system that can reward players in different ways. And of course, different ways to level up. And let's not mention the fact that we have factions here. And even if you look at a game like Infinite Warfare, they had factions that you could, if that's what they were called, that you could kind of level up. So it was kind of like another leveling system within a leveling system. And then, of course, you've got the challenges in there that can tie in as well, because you've got all the different kinds of movements and stuff like that. You can tie challenges to those, along with combinations such as do this while capping the objective or defending the objective. Or, of course, you can have your slaying objectives. You can have your XP objectives and amount of wins, amount of losses, blah, 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 you name it, right? They could literally make thousands and thousands of objectives. Like one of the things that I've never seen in COD that they never put in objectives is, what is it? Get 100 kills in a domination match. You know what I mean? The community was doing all this stuff for themselves. They were like, okay, I'm going to go for an 100 bomb or more in a domination match. Now, granted, you weren't really playing the objective all that much if you're going to do that. But again, people were still, you know, going for stuff like that just naturally. So it's like, well, you might as well just make it part of it, right? If you're really going to, you know, cater to the casuals or whatnot, you might as well do it. Now, I know what some of you guys are thinking, that, you know, not every casual is going to be able to get 100 kills. I get it, I understand it, and I agree with you, but the thing is, you can have multiple tiers as well. So when you look at your prestige level 1000, when you look at Halo Reach, when you look at what Titanfall did, etc., there's a whole bunch of different ways that the game could take inspiration from, right? And it's not just about watching those numbers show up on screen. That's only part of the ideal, but this is where you guys can come in and let everything know down in the comment section below, so that way the devs have at least a 1% chance of seeing it, you know, because I don't know if any of them are watching my stuff now, but again, this video, as well as any other form of social media within the community, could be used as a way of communicating to the devs in terms of what we might want. So this is where the comment section comes in, right? So I used it for X Defiant. And, you know, at the same time, if Ubisoft wasn't breathing down those guys' necks, and if they didn't do what they did, you know, I have a feeling that maybe there could have been a couple things that might have come to fruition within time, right? But this game is in a good spot right now, despite the fact that it's in beta. And there's a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of things that could happen for this game. And the fact that the gameplay is as good as it is, and as addictive as it is, and it's multi-layered as it is, but yet at the same time, it's got that really solid foundation of so many different aspects of first-person shooters that we've come to know over the last 15 plus years. You know, there's something to be said about that. So therefore, a system itself needs to be unique. You know what I mean? Even X Defiant had their own way of doing a progression system. And of course, when you're looking at a progression system, you have, you know, obviously the traditional one, and then you've got the seasonal, right? So I don't know how you guys, the community, feels about that, whether you want something that's seasonal or not. But at the same time, you can also have your progression system kind of in a way tied to leaderboards, you know, or have challenges be tied to the leaderboards. You know what I mean? Have the challenges and progression, and you know what level you reach in progression and stuff like that be applied to the system, right, in its own category. Not just the amount of total kills, you know, leaderboards for team deathmatch and stuff like that. Not just that, but we're talking like very specific things, like and have filters like for the day, you know, and then for the week, and then for the month, you know, or way beyond this stuff. And let's not forget about the different kinds of accolades, like for instance, for Modern Warfare 3, you know, there were accolades that you could get, right, for all these different kinds of medals for accolades and stuff like that. And they even had leaderboards for accolades, like you know, best KD ratio, you know, out of all the players in a match, you know, most kills, least deaths and stuff like that, or you know, things like that, you know, and again, you could apply that to Splitgate. Most objectives taken, most damage dealt, etc., etc. All these things could be added, and it's something that we haven't seen since probably the OG Modern Warfare 3, now that I mentioned it, right? So this is a way to not only show people, like to kind of, you know, put on a showcase in terms of what people can do in the forms of leaderboards and progression, but also to reward them, right? To reward them, and it gives them that much more of a dopamine effect as they continue to play and grind the game, right? I mean, imagine having something to where there's seemingly no end, and that there's always something to grind for, right? Because that's the only downside to a progression system. Eventually, you reach the end, but what if you don't? What if there is no end? What if you want to be that one person that, you know, that always sticks to the top, or always does this or always does that? What if there is no end? Because when you look at a rank system, right, like when you look at ranked, like for Halo Infinite Ranked or whatnot, it's not like players stop at Onyx. They want to continue to progress at Onyx and keep it and to keep those numbers high. But what if there was a reward system that was kind of tied to that, you know, consistently in some way, shape, or form, visually, you know, whether it's visually or in-game currency or something like that, reward the player? Or if there were specific camos that were just for, you know, the progression system. Like for instance, in Advanced Warfare, guess what? eventually with the weapon variants like the Obsidian Steed and the Insanity and stuff like that, well, if you made it to like first prestige, you get the Obsidian Steed, the second prestige, you get the Insanity, or however it was, or, you know, maybe you had to reach 10 prestige. I'm not sure, but the weapon variants in terms of the camos and stuff like that, and as well as the weapon variants themselves, were tied to the progression system. So that way players can get it if they grind the game, which makes sense because a lot of players were going to grind the game anyway. So it's like, hey, might as well, right? So again, what if you had these camos, or what if you had something to where, like, for instance, if you were to scope down with like a variant weapon, you know, the colors of and the HUD would look different in terms of that, you know, kind of like a Tron vibe, because this game has that neon color and LED light type of vibe to it, which I absolutely love. So, and we already know, if you looked at the store and stuff like that, you would have already seen that there's already some like reactive camos and stuff like that. Oh, speaking of which, they can, again, reactive camos, and you can make something literally to your most dedicated players. You know, I mean, if the CEO himself is rewarding people for sticking with them, you know, despite that they had to shut the servers down and all that kind of stuff and everything like that, and coming back to the game and everything like that, it's like, you know, they can definitely do something to where they tie in rewards, whether it's in the form of camos, whether it's in the form of different skins, whether it's the form of the HUD looking a certain way, or something to be, you know, or making the portals look even more badass or very specific, or, you know, having, you know, animations to where you have, like, you remember the Grunt birthday party, whenever you'd kill somebody with a headshot, you know, you'd get the confetti and stuff like that. What if Splitgate 2 did its own version of something like that? You know what I mean? And you don't just have to stop there. Your imagination is literally your limit. So again, this is where the community comes in. This is where you guys come in, and I want you guys to let it rip in the comment section, because quite frankly, you know, this game really is multi-layered, and this game has the fun factor. It's got the good maps, it's got the map editor, it's got the different modes and game modes and variations. And, you know, one day we may even see, you know, the community create a big, enormous game mode or something like that that can, you know, just, you know, rival Battlefield or something like that, but have Splitgate 2's flavor in there, right? Where it's more, where there's, you know, people getting into all sorts of interesting engagements all over the place, right? So it's, you know, I envision this game literally, you know, having like the sky as the limit, you know. So anyway, guys, I'm pretty much gonna end it here. I think I've pretty much said enough when it comes to this. So I know I took everybody on a trip to memory lane, down memory lane, with in terms of some of the systems that we've gotten in the past. So a hybrid system of some kind would be really cool. Or imagine if they actually managed to kind of implement their own ways, just like they have the game modes, right, that are kind of variants of the traditional game modes that we know, like the team deathmatch and then the firecracker and stuff like that, which is essentially a variation of search and destroy, but with a twist, you know, where you don't have unlimited, where you have unlimited lives unless you need to, you know, to have a tiebreaker or something like that. And then team deathmatch having, you know, rounds. And then if you're tied at, you know, 2 apiece, then you have to, you know, break the tie with you know, 1 life only and stuff like that. You know, it's pretty cool. You know, I found myself being open to it. At first I didn't know what to think, but as soon as I played, I'm like, yeah, this is fine, there's no problem. But yeah, let all your opinions, thoughts, ideas for a progression system be known down below. And let me know if you've ever made it to a level 1000 in COD or any one of the CODs, or if you've made it to Inheritor in Halo Reach, or if you reach level 152 in Halo 5, or, you know, or if you've max prestiged in every single game you played, you know, or if you've made it to Gen 10 in Titanfall, you know, all these things, let me know. And of course, ideas, of course, down below for the devs, as well as, you know, it's always interesting to read to what you guys have to say in terms of your creativity. So yeah, that'll end the video here. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and as always, I like to thank everybody for the support and for taking the time to watch and or listen, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.